Hi everybody, welcome to the stream today. Today we're going to be going over the settings part of the software. So most customers usually have this stuff set up. For any new customers that may be watching though, we're basically going to go through how to add some of the new features that we have today. We'll touch base on some of the QuickBooks things that we have. And then we'll also touch base on just maybe fine-tuning some of the stuff that you may possibly find problems on while you're dispatching or just doing any of your accounting work, and possibly try to make some of this stuff easier for you. If you guys have any questions throughout the entire training, there should be a chat box to the right. You might have to be actually logged into YouTube to see that, but if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, and we'll go over those as well. So let's bring this up here. All right, so basically what we're going to do, you can actually get to the settings part of the software one of two ways. The first way is just going to a website. And the website is just settings.dispatchanywhere.net. All right, so it's going to bring up your login page here. The other way to do it is if, we'll get the streaming software out of the way. If you have Dispatch Anywhere installed here, go ahead and log in here. Once you're logged in, you're able to click your name in the upper right hand corner and go to settings right here as well. Now it's going to open up the same web page, so it is a quick way to get to it if you're in the software, but if not, you can just go to a web page, which I'll do here today. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my regular login here. All right, so here's our settings page. So this is the first page you're going to see. Depending on security settings, anybody could technically log into settings. So depending on, let's say, a dispatcher's login, they may log into settings. They may not see everything down the left-hand side here like it's on my screen. They may only have the option where it says overview, and they're able to change their password here. Typically in the past, it was a company administrator's job or security level to change passwords for dispatchers, but if the dispatchers want to log in here and change their own password, they have that ability. If they want to change their username though, that's a little bit different story. We're going to have a company admin do that, and I'll show you how to set that up in the software here or in the settings part today too. So the overview page is just a basic login information and a password change. And we're kind of going to go through this left-hand side one section at a time. So we'll start with the company information. So down the company side here, company information, address, this email address, so this in our case support@beaconsoftco.com. This is used for, in the software, if a driver from the driver app or dispatch sends something out to a customer, it's going to use this email address, or this is going to be the reply email address for your customers. So in this case, we're just going to use our support email. Down here, you're going to see state license. You'll see this in a couple different places in our software. Typically, this is for certain states. So Texas, for example. Texas has Texas TDLR numbers that need to be on all of their invoices. California has a California number that needs to appear on it, and it's used here. Ohio has something similar where they need to show it on the invoice. So if you're a state that needs a state license or some sort of code on your invoice, you can fill out the state license and it would show up on your invoices then. Down here in the notification emails, this is used for the driver app. So if the drivers are doing any sort of pre-trip or vehicle inspection on their vehicle, you come up with whatever list of things you want them to check over. If it fails, whatever email address or email addresses that we have down here, you'll get a notice that, truck 5's headlights failed inspection. Now there's a report in the software that you can see that as well, but this will at least give you an email notification that, the truck has failed inspection on whatever item that might be. And I'll show you how to set up that list here today too. So this is just the general information on the company tab. Now we have a master job edit, and this will make a little bit more sense when we get to the accounts section. But basically what this is, you could set this up, and as you create accounts or you want certain things required on your accounts, you can change it in one place here instead of changing on each and individual account. So what I mean by that is we have owner name and phone number, reason, city, and bill to set up as required dispatcher fields. So that means on all my accounts, those are going to be required without me having to go into each and every single account and turn that on. Now, you could also do different driver fields and posting fields, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the account section. But just think the master job edit is basically a change you can do for all your accounts at once instead of making each an individual change. And again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit today. Job export, there's a couple customers that might use this. Basically what this is, if you take all the data that's on a call, so that includes services, timestamps, driver information, address, basically everything that's on a call, you can export it into an Excel format or a CSV format if you want to. You could also choose a certain impound lot, certain account, certain division, etc. And you can do this by finish time, receive time, or if you're looking at maybe impound exports when you released it. All right, so this is an option. It is in the settings section now. It used to be in our report section. It's here for more performance reasons. So it should run pretty quick for you, but that's also in the company tab. QuickBooks is new. This was just recently added on the last release. This is where you come to turn on QuickBooks if you need to. So by default it's off, but if you're going to be using QuickBooks Desktop, the download link for the exporter would be here. If you're using QuickBooks Online, you need to connect to your QuickBooks Online account right here, and you'd have to do this every 365 days. That's how long it holds the key for it. After that, it expires and we have to reinitialize it. But this is an option for customers that are using QuickBooks Online. As far as doing the actual export, it's pretty easy, and I'm going to show you today how to set up some of the setup pieces of it in the settings for that export to work. But if you're having trouble with that, let us know. That's one of those things that we like to do a training on, just because there's a couple different things that could potentially go wrong, or it may not connect the way you expect it to. So usually talk to us first before set up a training. We can go over this, but I'll show you how to at least get the setup part of it done today. All right. So that's the company part of the settings. All right. So we'll go ahead and leave. All right. Now your divisions or your locations. So in this case, in our database, we have multiple divisions set up here. Typically, most customers have one or two, depending on the situation. Now, this isn't necessarily your impound lots as far as locations. This is either the company or grouping of accounts that you're going to separate your sales out by. Or if you do work with motor clubs and you have multiple locations that they calculate en route from, we're going to have multiple divisions to basically accommodate for that. So on this tab, the General tab, is just basic information about the division. All right, so address, name. This telephone number and this email address, this is the email address that actually appears on your invoices and statements, not the one that the customer gets. It's just the one that appears. So there's a difference between this one and the company one. Again, state license. If you're in a state, which most are, they need to adjust for daylight savings, you can mark it. And then down here, you have an option now to upload your logo. So you can just pull it from your computer. As long as it's not a PDF, you're fine. So in this case, we have this green light towing logo already uploaded. On the dispatch tab here, current ETA, and we'll go through this one at a time. Current ETA 30 minutes. This is going to be a default ETA it places on our calls, unless we specifically put one on there. Now you can still always manually adjust it if you need to, but this is if I didn't put anything on the call, it would automatically default to 30 minutes. All right. Area code, kind of self-explanatory there. Clear time check. This is a setting pretty much for basic phones. All right. After X amount of minutes, if the driver would have finished it out on a basic phone, or we assign the next call to that driver in the system, if it was set for, let's say, 3 minutes, for example. After 3 minutes, if I would have assigned the driver their next call, it would automatically finish out the first call, as long as it's been at least 3 minutes or more. At this point, with the smartphone app, honestly, the drivers are going to be finishing out their calls themselves. But if we still have any customers or any drivers that are using a basic phone, this is an option to finish out those calls in the system automatically. But for the most part, most customers probably have this set for 999, so it never automatically finishes out a call. The driver should do that in the field. Schedule the wait. This is going to be for appointment calls in your system. So if you schedule a call out, let's say tomorrow at noon, and we have a 60-minute scheduled wait time, at 11 o'clock, so 60 minutes before that time, it's going to automatically move from the holding screen to your waiting area, so then you can assign your driver. So you're basically giving yourself a 60-minute ETA on an appointment call. All right, so I've seen a lot of customers either change this to maybe 90 minutes or 120 minutes, just to give them a little bit more of a buffer for appointment calls. Page warning, this is going to be on the dispatch side. So we dispatch that call out to a driver. If the driver doesn't confirm it after 1 minute, it flashes on the dispatcher side saying unconfirmed. So if we want a little bit, later of a warning, or 1 minute's the lowest you can go to, it will flash on the dispatch side letting us know that the driver hasn't confirmed that call yet. The resend interval is how quick or how often the driver gets repaged for that call. So in this case, the driver will get their initial sound, whatever they have set up. Then every 5 minutes after that, they're going to get another one, and another one, and another one, in a 5-minute increment until they can confirm that call. All right. So this I usually see anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes for customers. It's just a way to keep repaging their driver until they can confirm that call. Wait warning, this is in minutes also. This is basically if a call's been sitting on your waiting screen for too long. So I usually see anywhere from, let's say, 15 or 30 minutes. So in this example, if a call's been sitting on our waiting screen for more than 15 minutes, it will flash a dispatch letting us know that basically a call's been sitting there for too long in our waiting screen, and it hasn't been assigned to a driver yet. Okay. This default assign mode, this is also new. This is actually in beta testing right now in Dispatch Anywhere. There's an option to automatically assign the driver to a call. So before this, there was an option to see a list of all available drivers and see how close they are. This takes it a step further, where you can click assign, save and assign, and you can assign it based on this different criteria. So you can do best ETA unassigned preferred, meaning you might have a driver that has a good ETA but they're assigned to a call. This is going to only choose the best ETA on the drivers that are not assigned to a call first. Most fuel efficient, longest idle, or round robin. So we have a couple of these options now if we're using that function or if we're testing it out in the new software. But this is how we can change how it picks or who it picks based on this criteria. Geocode settings over here. Enable geocode on job save. So when we're saving a job, it's going to try to verify the pickup and drop-off addresses. So if we don't want to see that, we can shut this off completely. Auto select high confidence geocode results. Basically what this means is if that box comes up and it geocodes that address and there's only one option in there, it's going to choose that every single time as a high confidence result, or basically almost identical to what you have. Now, this works most of the time, but if you're using this and you're seeing, my addresses are randomly changing without me really, typing anything in, chances are you have this turned on. And it's changing your addresses because it's selecting that high confidence result 100% of the time without you actually seeing it. So this is one of those things if customers want to use it, I tell them to turn it on, but just keep an eye on your calls, because what's happening is if this one is selected at the bottom, this will autocorrect or change the address that's already on your call. So if you have all three of these selected, for example, it's going to geocode it, automatically select it if it's a high geocode or there's only one result that's in the box, and then auto correct your job and change the address on your call. So just be careful about that. Most of the time, most people typically have the first and the last one selected, and they want to see that box come up just to make sure that the address that's going to be changed is really what they want. All right, so we have that option here. The accounting tab here, so we have a couple options here. Invoice number, either job number or ticket number. We recommend job number, but if you are putting a ticket or your own invoices on every single call, you can choose this. If you're going to change this or you want to change this, whether it's to ticket number or from ticket number to job number, you need to call us before you make this change. What could potentially happen is you could change this and not realize that you're duplicating invoice numbers in your system, and you're going to have a mess on your accounting side. So if you're going to change this, just let us know. We can walk you through how to possibly reset your job numbers so there's not any mistakes on your accounting. Just let us know. Then we have these three boxes: invoice message, legal statement, and a tow ticket message. The invoice message, this is something that would appear on all your invoices that are generated out of Dispatch Anywhere. So what I mean by that is, let's bring up DA here real quick. So if we'll pick this call here. Let's pull up our invoice. All right. So if I pull up my invoice, this message, this damage release, appears at the bottom of my invoice. All right, so this would appear on every single invoice that I generate out of Dispatch Anywhere. All right. The legal statement and the tow ticket message, these are two different things that my driver can show my customer in the field. So when the driver brings up the receipt in the app, they'll have an option to capture the customer signature. When they click that, whatever we have written here, either in one or both boxes, the customer can read over, click I agree, and then they can sign right off on the tow ticket for the driver. So where this stuff appears, either the legal statement or the tow ticket message, this appears, I'm going to go to the tow ticket here. The tow ticket is a thing that the driver can send out from the driver app. Those two messages appear here and here. And actually, I'm sorry, not that one. The one where it says tow ticket message, and then this is our legal statement right here. All right, this damage release. And then if we have, and this one happens to have one, if we have a customer signature on it, we'll see the customer signature on here as well. So you got 3 boxes. So invoice message out of Dispatch Anywhere, legal statement and tow ticket message off the driver app. All right, so you can put whatever you want in these boxes. Right? As far as payment settings, whenever we take a payment in DA, the invoice will come up and the receipt will come up. If we wanted to, we can unselect one or both if we don't want to see them every single time. Some customers like to manually pull them up if they need them. Password required on payment, exactly as it sounds. You have to put a password in every time you take a payment in the system. Auto post on payment, basically what this means is if this is selected, the call will automatically post. If payment in full is taken, the person that took the payment has posting capabilities, and then everything that we said was required on the call is filled out. So as long as those 3 criteria are met, the job will bypass the posting screen and just drop into your accounts receivables. All right. If it's a driver, drivers don't have posting capability, so they'll show up in your posting or your create invoices screen 100% of the time. Right? And then allow release on partial payment. Basically, this is for your impounds. If we had a $400 balance, but we took a $300 payment, that car could be released out of your impound. There's not a lot of places that need this. There are certain areas, though, that require this by law. But for most customers, this is probably turned off. But if you are in an area that needs it, there is an option to turn it on. Impound tab, verify VIN on release. This kind of goes hand in hand with the release stuff. If this is selected, when we're releasing a card of impound, it will make us put the last 6 of the VIN in. And then we have our last 3 tabs here. And this is integrations that we do. So merchant, we have integration with Sage and ExpressPay. So these are just different credit card integrations that we do. Sage is a traditional credit card processor. ExpressPay is a little bit different. ExpressPay works by you sending a link to your customer. The customer fills out their own credit card information, and then that information then is paid off in your system. So it's a little bit different than you taking the credit card information from the customer. With ExpressPay, the customer basically does it on their own. SMS or texting. This is for our tow status product. Basically what this does, we have integration with Mercury Send. This will allow you to send status messages out to your customer. So when the job is assigned to a driver and they confirm it, your customer gets their first text message letting them know that so-and-so tow company is on the way. And then it gives them a link to verify the address that they have on the call. They can either say, yes, this is the correct address, or they can update to their geolocation if their GPS is working on their phone. When the driver goes en route, they get another text message with a link to a map. It shows them where they're at, where the drivers are at, gives them an ETA based on that distance, and then they also have your telephone number if they need to call you. And then when the driver arrives, they get a text message basically letting them know that the driver's there. All right. Mercury Send is a third-party company, so if you're interested in this, they do charge an additional fee for that service, but that is another option, or basically a customer service piece that you could add into your software. And survey integration, we have integration with 4 different companies here, Mercury Send being another one of them, and then OMG, Tow Program, and White Rail. Basically, when the job's finished, your customer would get a text or an email with a link to a survey, and they can basically rate your service. And then positive surveys you can set up where they go out to the different websites. So your Googles, your Yelps, basically Facebook, any of those places, your positive surveys go out there. So they might offset potentially any negative surveys that customers leave for you. You're offsetting them with positive surveys that you're doing through the survey integration. So these are just, again, a couple of different integrations that we do with payments, texting, or surveys. If you want more information about this, let us know. We also have a couple help articles in our help section up here that you can go to, and it has the links for that information up there as well. All right, so that's the division information. So pretty straightforward. The only thing to note, if you need to add additional divisions in here, let us know. We have to add that on our side right now. Just give us a quick call or shoot us a message to our support system, and we can add one in for you. So it's not a big deal. You just got to let us know. All right, leave that. All right, now users, these are going to be anybody that's dispatching or doing any sort of accounting in our software. All right, so we have a bunch in our test database here. And you can see that a couple different people have different icons next to their name. If you have a little wrench next to your name, that means you're a company admin. Company admin has access to everything in here. That includes users, setting up usernames and passwords for drivers, etc. If you have a little lock next to your name, this is a view-only profile or a read-only profile. Basically, with this profile, you can log in, see what's going on in the system. You just can't make any changes. All right. So this is good for maybe you're an owner and you want to see, maybe you're not dispatching, but you want to just maybe have it logged in on your phone. You want to see what's going on, what calls are in the system. There's also a link on the mobile app to where the drivers are at. This is a great login to use. And if you're a customer that has a limited amount of logins, this doesn't count against your normal 2, 3, 4 system. This would be in addition to that. So it's basically like a free login. You just can't make any changes on it. Right? Your other users are basically your standard users. All right. If you need more company admins, normally a single company has one, but if you need additional ones, let us know. On our side, we can set that for you as well. So it's not too bad. It's pretty easy to do on our side. You just got to give us a call, or again, shoot us a message to our support system. All right. But if you're adding a new person in, you got to create up a username for them, a password, first and last name, either all divisions or division specific. If you set them to a certain division, that's the only division they can work in. Department, these are used for, there's one report in our system, sales by apartment or sales by department. And this will allow you to get a sale. So let's say you have a dispatch center and a shop or garage. You can put people in different departments, and then you can run a report to say, okay, X amount of calls came or were generated out of my shop. X amount of calls were generated out of my dispatch center. So just a way to do that. There's only one department in here, but we can add more, and I'll show you how to do that. That's going to be in the dictionary section in a second here. All right. Internal comments, if you want to put anything in here, you have a spot for it. And then user roles, this is kind of what the person can get into, and we'll go over how to set these up or possibly change different things for people. They have 5 by default, but you can create as many as you want to, depending on restrictions that people need within the software. So those are the users or dispatchers or accounting that might be in the software. The only thing to note on this for customers coming over from, let me see if I can find one here. Here's a good one. For customers that are coming over from DA2, our old program, chances are, or ones that might have already been migrated, chances are your username is just this PIN number. So in this case, it's the same as this DA2 PIN number. Those customers still needed this ID number, or if you migrated over, you had the same thing. You can come in here and change it to something else. If it's easier to remember a username that you created, go ahead and update this to something maybe like first initial, last name or something along those lines. You have that option. But by default, if you migrated over, you're just going to have this PIN number, which you may remember or you've been using for a while. We recommend changing it to something, though, a little bit easier. And you can always update your password here as well. You could also take away user rights. So maybe a user quit, maybe they got fired. You can come in here and basically take away all user access, maybe change their password or change their username so they don't have access to the system anymore. Right. There is a delete button up here. If you delete the user, they will be deleted off of any call that they've done in the system. It also deletes them off of any potential reports that they might have been on. So be careful about that. If you delete somebody by mistake, let us know. We can always restore the user for you. But usually you don't delete your users from the system unless they've been gone for a while and you don't care about the data on the calls anymore. All right. But again, if it's a problem, you can always tell us to restore them. That's not a problem. The only thing to note here, some of these people are logged in. You can see that they're green. This dictates that these people are all logged in on a computer. In this case, this Brian's account, he's logged in on his mobile. You can see a little cell phone icon here. So if you're a company admin, you have the power to come in here and disconnect or kick people out of the system if you need to. Just click a button and it will disconnect them. So that should disconnect this here in a second. And this will actually, the next thing I try to do usually when I start trying to open calls. And a couple, there it goes, user logged out. So you can kick your users out if you need to, so you have that power in here as well. Right. So that's users. Drivers, again, we have a bunch here in our test database. All right, so when you're, actually let's do a new driver here first. If you're creating a driver display name, this is going to be the name that appears on our dispatch screen. It's a name that appears on our reports. It's also the name that if you're using our tow status product, the name that the customer gets in the field. Number, if we have an employee number, we can put it here. We have to put something here. So if you don't have employee numbers, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is perfectly fine. You can assign your drivers to certain divisions or all division if they drive for multiple. State license, again, that's usually for our Texas customers. First and last name, that's the required stuff when you're adding a driver. The rest of it, emergency contacts, address, notes, telephone numbers, this is all for you if you want to put this in here. We don't use this really in the program except for the mobile number. I'll show you here. See, I still have a PIN from our old system. I haven't changed it yet. Let's see who has one. Here's one. All right, so Brian has in his driver profile his telephone number listed as a cell phone. If it's listed, the dispatcher will be able to see this here. All right, so that mobile number on the settings side is used on the dispatch side, so it shows here for our dispatchers. Other than that, everything else is for you on this page. And admin is just more information about the driver, so birthdays, years of experience, license, etc. This driver's license expiration, this is used in one of our reports in our system. If you run it for a date range, it will show you, within this date range, these driver's licenses are going to be expiring. Other than that, everything else in here is for you. Inactive button's pretty important. You never want to delete your drivers out of the system once they've been created. If you delete them, you've deleted them off of every single call and pretty much all the reports in the system. Again, if you did it by accident, call us, we can restore that driver for you. But normally you just mark them as inactive, and then you save it. Now, this list typically shows, or at least by default, will show your active drivers. This little filter up here, though, we can either show all active or inactive drivers. So these are all the inactive drivers in our system. So if you set somebody inactive by mistake, you can just go back to their profile and uncheck this, and that will make them active again. So you don't, anytime, let's say a driver was seasonal or whatever, they came back, you can just uncheck this, and then they become an active driver back in your list. All right, so that there is an option for that. Now, once the profile has been saved, so I'll show you here really quick again. We only had 2 tabs. Once the driver information is saved, and it tells us up here, save the driver to access apps, ticketbooks, etc. Here's Brian. We'll get these other tabs up across the top. So we'll start at commission. So commission, we can set different commission for each of the drivers in here. We can do rate adjustments if we need to, and time templates. You may need a time template. Maybe the driver gets paid after hours for commission. I'll show you how to set this stuff up here in a second too. Apps, this is where we're going to set up the username and the password for a driver. So if we need to change it or update their password, we can do it here. The driver doesn't have the capability of doing this themselves though. So if they need to be changed or updated, company admin will have to do this. Notifications, this would be set up if we wanted to email or text message the information to the driver. Normally, if they're using the smartphone app though, they don't need this information, but there is an option if we want to set that up. Normally this used to have to be, we set this up for drivers that had a basic phone, but normally, again, if they're using the smartphone app, you can kind of skip over this. Ticket books, if you're using any sort of numbered invoice book, you can put that information in here. It's just a way for you to keep track of it yourself. And then images, this lets you upload images for the driver's profile. You can put as much as you want in here, and then if we need to delete it or upload more, you have that option in here as well. All right. These pictures that we have, so Brian has one, Dan has one, etc. What these are used for is if you're using our tow status product, this is the picture that gets sent to the customer. So that will show them where they're at on a map, and a little circle will be on that link that they receive, and it will show a picture of the driver as well. So again, it's just a nice way for the customer to see kind of who's coming to get them. It also shows what kind of vehicle that they're in. So it might say that, Dan's in a red flatbed and this is what he looks like. So when he gets there, the customer's not surprised or just like, hey, who am I looking for? Oh, okay, this is what Dan looks like. So it is another customer service piece that we have in here, but we'd have to upload a driver picture for each person too. So that's the the driver section, so pretty straightforward on that. Just some data entry or updating if you need to. Your vehicles, they work very similar to this. So you can have a truck number or code up here, type of vehicle, division it belongs in, state license again for our Texas customers. Year, make, model, color, that's the required stuff. Everything else, VIN numbers, plates, expirations, bed numbers, etc., notes. This is all for you if you want to put it in here. We don't use anything in the program except for the plate expiration. This works similar to the drivers. There's one report in our system, and you can set a date range, and it will tell you when those plates are going to be expiring. So it is a manual option there, but it is an option if we want to use it. It does require you to update this every single time that the plate gets renewed, though. Right. GPS, if you have GPS set up in the software, or you have either a new one that you get or an existing one that we already do integration with, we can set that up in the system. We would just match the trucks up one for one. So you might have called it, let's say, 001 in your GPS software, but that actually matches up to truck 13 that you have in our software. So it's just a way to match it up. If we already integrate with 17 or 18 different GPS providers now, so we might already work with one that you have. So instead of tracking the driver's cell phone, we'll use the GPS location. If it's not a GPS company we already integrate with, we'll pretty much integrate with anybody. Our main requirement on that is a customer, at least one customer is using it. So if you have a GPS provider, let us know. We can, I can't promise how quick it's going to get done, but we'll integrate with any of the GPS providers. Just let us know. All right. Admin, more information about the truck if you want to put it in here. And then images, same idea. You can upload images for your trucks in here. I've also seen like maintenance paperwork, pictures of people's trucks. Basically anything that pertains to that vehicle could be uploaded here, and it's unlimited space. All right, so that's the vehicle information. So again, pretty straightforward. All right, our services, these are all the different services that our program knows or what we can use on our price lists when we start creating them, and we'll get to that in a second. The main thing you want to do in here is if you have a new service that isn't already in the software, you can do it here and add it ahead of time. So call it whatever you want. We can put it in different categories. Type we could do none, which would be some sort of flat rate. Labor would be hourly. Mileage is loaded, in route or deadhead or return. And then if it's a storage calculation, and I'll show you how these work here in a second when we create some price lists. If it's commissionable or if you pay commission on it, you can mark it as such. If it's a non-revenue service, like for example, paid out charges typically aren't a revenue service, you can mark it as such. Then it won't count in your sales reports. Allow storage to continue on partial payments. If it's a storage item that we're adding and we want the storage to continue on partial payments, that may be a case of, insurance pays, through today, but you're not actually releasing it. The customer might not pick it up until next Monday or whatever. Just because you applied a payment to it doesn't mean that the storage is going to stop. So depending on if we have that type of situation, we can mark our storage services like that. This would be what the motor club bills it as. So you could call it whatever you want. So I can call it, flatbed, tow, wheel lift. Most of the motor clubs typically just bill it out as towing. Right? But you can call it whatever you want to break it up in your system. But as far as the motor clubs, if you're using our motor club billing, we need to match it up to whatever their item is. Right? And this is the other thing I want to touch on. As long as we turned on QuickBooks, which we talked about in the company information, there is an option to match your QuickBooks items here. So again, you can call it whatever you want to call it in Dispatch Anywhere, but we need to match it up with whatever term or whatever item name that you have in QuickBooks. So we need to put that here if you're going to use our QuickBooks export option. Case, spacing, it has to match 100%. If it doesn't match 100%, it's going to fail when it goes to do the export, and you're going to get a message basically letting you know that so-and-so invoice failed because of, and it's one of two things. You either failed because your services don't match, or your services in Dispatch Anywhere don't match your item names in QuickBooks, or we're going to look at in a second the accounts. If your account doesn't match the account that's in QuickBooks or your customer that's in QuickBooks, it's going to fail. All right, so this is step one with QuickBooks integration, is getting the services matched up to your item names in QuickBooks, and then your accounts need to be matched up with your customers in QuickBooks, and I'll show you where to do that in a second. But again, these are pretty straightforward too when you're adding them, just your services. Your accounts, basically your customer accounts in here. So we have a bunch of different accounts in here. So I'll use mine as an example here. All right. So we got Matt's Racing Supplies. If they have an account number and you want it to appear on their statement or invoice, you can put it here. Type of account it falls into. Again, there's a report in our system. It's sales by account type. So all of our body shops, all of our motor clubs, all of our police accounts, they all get grouped up into one big sales total. So let's say at the end of the month or end of the year, you could run this report and say, okay, I did 50 calls out of my body shop, I did 100 out of my police, and I did 10 out of my motor club. And it would give you just a sales total for each of those categories. So you can see maybe, end of the month, end of the year, where a lot of your business is coming from. So it is beneficial to have your accounts matched up correctly in here. All right. You can set your accounts to certain divisions. If it's all divisions, that means that account can be used in any one of your divisions you may have. If you only have one division, or this is a division-specific account, you can mark it as such. So for example, if I set this to the M2 division, I couldn't use this in, let's say, Greenlight, for example. So if I was running a call at a Greenlight division, Matt's Racing Supplies wouldn't be an option. It doesn't exist there. It only exists in the M2 division. But you can also just set it for all divisions. Then you can run it anywhere. This QuickBooks option, QuickBooks account name, this is matching the customer account in QuickBooks. So again, capitalization, spacing, in this case has apostrophe, everything has to match 100% or it's not going to transfer over into QuickBooks. So again, if something doesn't match, it's going to tell us on that exporter if something is wrong or what the issue is. Maybe we can just go back and fix it. But usually getting this set up is pretty easy. Now, if your account names are the same thing that you have in QuickBooks, and you have a bunch of accounts, if you have hundreds of accounts and you don't want to go through every single one by one, let us know. We have the option to go ahead and take this and just pull it down here automatically for you. Just let us know. If you only have a handful of accounts, though, just go ahead and either copy it down or type the account name in here, and you're good. All right. Default ETA. This is an ETA that this account uses specifically. So up in our division, I believe we had a half hour. All right. In this case, if I ran Matt's Racing Supply, this will always use 60. So it's basically an account override for an ETA if you have anything like that. Then we have primary and secondary contacts, address, notes, remarks, and so forth. This information now is potentially important. If you have special notes on an account, your dispatchers now have the ability, I'm just going to create a new call here. So let's do Greenlight, do Matt's Racing Supplies. There's this little I or information icon, all right? This information is pulling over from your settings now. So if you have information that maybe your dispatchers need to see, and it could be, you might have a different bill too. That's why you have two different little information icons. You can put more information on here so your dispatchers can see it. Everybody won't have access to your settings. So it is a way to give them information they may need without giving them access to all of your, adding new accounts and pricing, etc. All right, so that's where that information feeds in. This address right here, the location, this is important if, let's say I'm saying this is actually going to Matt's Racing Supply. It pulls the address over if it's on the account. All right. So that is an option if it's account-specific addresses. This also does the automatic lookup anyways by itself, but this is another way just to use this address to feed into your calls. Right. Lien processing stuff over here, tow lien, send vehicles to tow lien automatically. So maybe if this is a police account, I can send this to tow lien automatically if I need to, if you're a tow lien state. This part down here is for tow status. All right. If you have the texting, you can use this. If you don't have the texting, you can still use this, but it's by email only. So what I mean by that, so if I have the texting plan through Mercury Send, and I want to send it to the contact telephone number on the call, I can select this, and I can send it to the owner one as well. All right. So what that means is on my call, this is your contact number, this is your owner number. This should be either one or both, should be a cell phone number. And if you're using the texting plan, we'll send a text to either this number or both if they're selected. If you don't have a texting plan, the only option that you'll have here is this, send notification to owner email. So you can still use the tow status product, but you have to use it by email, not texting. So you just have to make sure that if you're going to do that, your customer is aware that they're going to get an email versus a text message. But it works the same way. They'll get, when the driver goes en route, when they arrive and so forth. You can still do all that by email. You just got to let your customer know they're going to get it by an email versus a text message, right? And then if you have survey integration, you can turn it on for certain accounts. You want a survey to go out, in this case for Matt's Racing Supplies, we can turn that on. So you can really customize your accounts, which accounts possibly use the tow status, which accounts get surveys. So you may have, your cash accounts that you want the survey to go out on, but maybe your, dealership, they don't need to get a survey type thing. So you can customize how you want that here, right? The rest of these tabs here, billing, so bank account numbers. If you have TowMagic, this is for billing. We'd have to just match it up with the right account in your TowMagic. Billing terms, so if you're like a net 15, net 30 for that account, you can mark it so the invoice shows that. You can set credit limits for an account. 0 is unlimited. You can rate your accounts. Last time you billed them when you created the account. Hide from AR if we need to. Maybe it's a write-off account of some sort, or we don't want to show this on our receivables reports. We can do that. Disabling the account, very similar to not deleting your accounts. If you delete the account, you actually delete every single call in the system. So if you just disable it, it will save all that history. You can still see anything you need to. Remarks of some kind if you need to. The reason that this is here, you may have additional remarks that your dispatchers don't need to see. So you can put that here, and then only people that have access to this would see that. Billing information. This is the information that appears on the statement and or invoice. So let's pull up a quick. Invoice here. So that address that's what fills in this information on your invoice. So whatever you have on this billing tab. Billing fax, billing email. Those are used for in the software. If you email the receipt, and let's say it's going to go to Matt's Racing Supplies, if the email is saved to the account, it would show up there. Same thing if you're going to fax it. That information will fill out for you automatically on the fax. You could obviously type it into. This is just a quick way to do it. This also needs to be filled out, and I'll show you here in a second with invoicing. If you set it up for automatic invoicing, you need to have either an email address or fax number here, depending on what you're sending. Spots for tax IDs too. Invoicing, we have an option to include in batch. So if this is an invoice only account, a statement only account, or both, you can mark it as such. We have a bunch of different invoice styles that are in here. To get a general idea kind of what these look like, up here you have the little question mark. This will take you into our help section. Right? And if you click on Dispatch Anywhere, we have a bunch of different help articles in here. So getting started stuff is a lot of the setup side of it that we're looking at today. Dispatching, so on and so forth. We have a specific article for invoice styles, and this will go through every single one of those invoice styles for you. So you may be, some of them have different information that you may like better than the other ones, start and finish time, so on and so forth. So it might help you maybe pick a different invoice style, or maybe certain accounts, maybe your police accounts need something specific on it. You can mark it as such. Right. Automatic sending of invoices. You can either send out an invoice automatically when the job is finished. You can do it by email or fax. You can do it when it's invoiced or created. Basically what that means is that somebody's at least checked it over for accuracy before it goes out. But again, you can send it by email or fax. This message here is account specific. So in this case, this message here, please make checks payable to Greenlight Towing, etc. This will only appear for the Matt's Racing Supplies invoice. And that appears right here. All right, so there's a note section, but this would be the same number that would appear on every single one of my invoices. Right? This show photo URL on invoice, again, would be something specifically to Matt's Racing Supply. The customer could click this if there's any job photos on here. I don't know if there is or not. But basically they would have a link. Yeah, there's no job photos on this one. But they would have a link to see any pictures that might be on that invoice or that call. So you can turn it on for certain accounts if you want to by this. Statements, same idea. We have a bunch of different statement styles depending on what information you want to show. And then you can send this, if you want to send it automatically, you can send them daily, which is every day, weekly, which is every Sunday, monthly, which is on the 1st of every month, or you can choose a custom date. Maybe I want to send these on the 4th of every month. Maybe it takes me a couple days to close out the end of the month, so I want to wait till the 4th to actually send those out. And same idea, I can send it out by email or fax as well, so you have either option. with the statements, if you're doing this, you just got to make sure the reason you may set a custom date is it only, at least on the statement, it only shows calls that you've posted. So if the call hasn't been posted or invoiced, it's not going to show in your statement. So that's what I mean. It might take a couple days to close out the end of the month or get those calls posted. So if you chose like the 3rd or the 2nd, for example, you need to make sure that all your calls are posted before the end of the month's over. Otherwise, it won't be on their statement when you send it automatically. Right. So you got a couple different options here if you want to set that up. You obviously can send it manually if you need to as well. This is just a way to take some of that manual work out and just automate a lot of that for your different accounts. All right. User defined, I'm going to skip over. There's not too much here right now anyways. This is going to be something later on. Web access, basically this is a portal for, in this case, Matt's Racing Supplies. They would be account 294 and I can choose my password as test. They could go to this portal, type in a call for me, and that call would feed right into my system. Right? So it's basically almost taking an account and making it like a motor club where the account information feeds in. Me being Matt's Racing Supplies, from this portal, I can also keep track of my own calls, so that is an option. Pricing, all right, we can set or use different price lists. So by default, you probably only have 1 or 2, unless you've made a couple more in here. So you can make more price lists, and a price list is supposed to be either pricing for groupings of your accounts, or if you have an account, let's in this case Matt's shop test, that's very specific to that account, we make a price list for that account, and that's how the account uses prices when we take a call. So things like dollies or 100, flatbeds 100, or 20 and 100. And we can change this. Let's say this account, for the most part, uses most of these prices, but for them, I actually charge 125. Or no, let's say they get a discount, I charge 75 to them. Now, I could absolutely make a brand new price list and go through the whole process, or I can do what we call an account override and just change the price for that one item. Right? And it indicates here that it's different than my original price list. Right? And I can do that as well. All right? This will clear all the overrides all at once. Right? And I'll show you here in a second how to make a price list and how to price this stuff out correctly. Right? Hide pricing on tow ticket, basically what that means. Again, remember the tow ticket is what the driver can send out. If we hide the pricing, and this is more for motor clubs or maybe any accounts that the customer needs to get a receipt, but they don't need to see the pricing on it. This is my tow ticket. It doesn't show any of my pricing. You know, it may show some of the other information I have on that call, but it doesn't show my pricing. The invoice, though, the invoice would show all that information. All right, so you have 2 different things. Think about an invoice as a full invoice. A tow ticket, it's supposed to mimic the ticket a driver would write in the field. But again, you have the option to hide it for that specific account. Right? Price adjustments, if we have a blanket, maybe this account gets a 10% discount all the time. I can do a minus 10% discount, but this would discount everything on that account. I could also say, you know, maybe my, I don't know, fuel deliveries. Maybe they get just a 10% discount on that item only. I can do that as well. So blanket discount, or you can do individual account specific discounts if we need to. If we're doing any discounts, we can show that adjusted price on the call entry, the invoice, or the statement. These are selected by default. They will be shown on all of these. But let's say you have a dealership, and this is usually the case. Somebody might have a dealership and the customer needs to see the full price, let's say $100. All right. The dealership's only going to pay me $75 for that. So I don't want to show, maybe I don't want to show the discount on the invoice. I want the invoice to say $100. I could do something like this because I'm not showing that discount on the invoice. My invoice goes out at $100. When they pay me on my accounting side and in my enter payment window, it's going to show $75 though. So my reports, my payment window, all of that is already correct on my side, but this way I don't have to go back and discount the stuff later. The system's already going to do it for you. And the same idea, maybe I don't want to show that discount on the call entry to maybe not confuse everybody. I can hide it here, and I can hide it from my statements if I need to. So you may need to adjust these things based on the situation. And then I have default services. In this case, we have tow and mileage, and you can add any services in here. Just make sure whatever services you have as default are on your price list. Right? If the service isn't on your price list and you're trying to run a call, so if I tried to choose flatbed heavy, for example, that's not on my price list here, When I run a call for Matt's Racing Supply, it's not there. I don't have it on my price list. So when you make your price list or you're choosing your price list for the account, you want to make sure you have all the price lists that and all the services that you could use. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use it when you run a call. So it does get, it's one of those things you might change over time, but just be careful about that with your price list. Make sure, even if it's one of those services you might use once a year, for example, or just out of the blue every once in a while, make sure it's on your price list, or at a minimum, maybe make a miscellaneous item on there. So then, dispatch can put that on there, and then we can always fix it on the accounting side. All right, so there's just little tips and tricks on that stuff. But the default services, the way that those are used, if I'm doing, let's say Matt's Racing Supply, when I press this button here, Add Defaults, that's where it's pulling from. My default services up here. All right. Job Edit. So this is where you can get either account specific, or we talked about at the beginning how you can do a global change, right? So the global change, we had the owner name and phone number, remember. I came in on this account and I shut that off. Maybe I don't need it turned on for this account, but for all my other accounts I do. You have the option to basically turn off and override, right? I've also taken it a step further for this account. Maybe this is always the same information 100% of the time when I run a call. I can pre-fill these fields out. So what's happening is when I run a brand new call, that's why all this information filled out automatically for me without me having to type any of this stuff in. It's because my job edit screen already had it filled out for me. Now, that doesn't mean I can't change this when I run a new call. If it's different for whatever reason, I can always change it still. It just saves the dispatcher from retyping the same information in for that specific account every single time. So it is an option. The other things you can do, if you hover over any one of these fields, you get a couple different options here. So you can make something required to save, and that's yellow. Required to save, that means it's a dispatcher field. Your dispatcher has to fill that out before they dispatch the call out to a driver. You can do required to finish, and that's that checkered flag there. That turns it orange. That's going to be a driver field. Our driver is going to be prompted for that information in the field. You can do a posting field, which is pink. This is going to be for accounting. If this is not filled out by the time it gets to the posting or the create invoices step, it's going to flag it and tell you that something's wrong with that call, or it's missing information that you said was required for posting. And then if you don't need to see the field, so let's say like for Matt's Racing Supply, we don't have a member or mileage limit, I can just hit that little eyeball. Maybe there's no copay. All right, if I do something like that, so we'll look at it here real quick. They show right here, right now. If I run a new one real quick, now they're gone. All right, so this is just another way that you can kind of clean up your calls for dispatchers, just getting rid of fields that don't really apply to that account if they don't need to see it. So that's just another way to clean it up a little bit. But that's your job edit screen. Data sharing, this only applies for customers doing motor club work. This is going to be on by default for all your motor clubs, so Ajero, Allstate, etc. Basically what this does, if this is checked, this gives us the ability to share your information with the motor clubs. If you don't want to share that information, you can always uncheck this on your various motor club accounts in here. Basically, if you hover over any of these little question marks, this will show you the information that we are sharing or potentially sharing with the motor clubs. So things like timestamps, where the drivers are at, ETA, so on and so forth. This is only when they're on those calls, though. So if we're sharing information with a Ajero and your driver's not on an Ajero call, it's not going to share the information. So it's only when they're on their calls. So it is an option if you want to either leave it on or shut it off. All right. Images, same idea as the drivers in the vehicles. You can upload images. I've seen usually contracts uploaded here before for their accounts or different accounts. So there is an option for that if you want to. But that's just the basic accounts, getting all your customers, or possibly doing some account-specific type overrides on here. Right. Impound lots, pretty straightforward. You just add your impound lots in here. Now down here, it's kind of new, this lien processing. If you have a tow lien account and you want the stuff sent over, we need to know what account name it is. And then this is how many days before it's moved. So we talked about here a second ago, automatically move calls over from certain accounts. So let's say we have Matt's Police Station, and I set it for automatically to send over. Well, if I take a Matt's Police account call and I sent it to the Greenlight Yard, This is how many days before it moves over to tow lien automatically. So maybe I want to wait 5 days before I actually send it over to tow lien. I can set that here because maybe the customer is going to come pick it up. I don't want to start all the lien processing stuff for a couple days, or maybe I even want to wait 15 days or whatever before it automatically moves over to tow lien. That way you're not billed for the information, because as soon as it's sent over to tow lien, it automatically does the vehicle registration search, and it typically sends out the first letter for you as well. So if it does that, it obviously comes off of your balance that you have on tow lien. So you may want to adjust this. Or if you don't want it to send after X amount of days and you would rather manually send it, you have that option in your impound. We'll just bring up one here where you have this little button here, send to tow lien. All right, and you can send these over manually whenever you want to. So some customers like that, they have a little bit more control over it. But there is an automatic or automated way to do that as well. If it is sent over to tow lien though, this, I don't know if we have any in here. Here we go. You'll have a green check mark here. All right, so it will let you know that it's been sent over. With releasing the car out of here and tow lien, once it's released, it stops the process on tow lien as well. All right, so there's a correlation between Dispatch Anywhere and tow lien, and again, it's only in the states that we offer tow lien access. All right. Dictionaries. Now, we've been looking at a couple different sections where we have a drop down. Basically, if anything has a drop down, or you want to change some of the wording on different things, if the option isn't apparent right there, chances are it's in the dictionary. There's going to be a dictionary to change different things. So for example, the most common ones are typically truck model. All right, so when you're adding a vehicle in, if the truck model you want isn't there, you can either like overwrite one that you know you don't have, or you can always add new ones to the bottom here. All right. Same thing with different truck types. You have that option. Colors for the most part are pretty good. Makes are usually pretty good, but there's a bunch of different ones depending on, you can have different vehicle statuses out of Dispatch Anywhere. You can change the colors if you want it to be something else. So your on-duty cars show, I don't know, maybe I want them purple instead, for example. You have that option to change all that stuff. If you are a customer that charges taxes on anything, you can mark your different tax rates in here if we need to. And like ours, you can add as many as you need to. Most people typically have 1 to 2 in here, but there's options to add more. Priorities is something people kind of skip over or don't maybe know about as much. Basically, we can make as many or different priorities as we want to in here. And we can add different icons for them. All right? And what these are used for on a call, that's a call. It doesn't have a priority. We must have it hidden. Hold on. Let's see if we can find one that has one. There we go. All right. So this has the different priorities I can choose from. So I can not only set the priorities or possibly code my calls differently, it's mainly used for your dispatch screen. So I can identify what these calls are without ever having to open them up. All right. So you can customize this, set different icons, so on and so forth, if you want to use this. Right. But that's a good little tip that not a lot of people have set up. The other things in here, driver checklist. At the very beginning, we talked about the pre-trip inspection the driver can do. This is where you can set up whatever you want for the drivers to check over. So we have a bunch of different descriptions, whatever truck type it applies to. So like our grinder, safety equipment, mirrors, horn, etc. These are going to show up on every single truck or any truck that the driver scans into. But maybe I have certain items specifically for my 4x4, specifically for my flatbed. We can mark it as such. So when they scan into a flatbed specifically, they'll be asked for all this stuff, plus fluid levels, plus fuel. All right. So you can come up with whatever list of things you want to that the drivers can check over. You can trash can stuff if you don't need it. You can obviously add more. And then this will reorder it for you. So maybe you came up with a huge list, and then you want to go back and say, okay, now if I was walking around the truck, what order would this make sense? You could take them and just kind of move them wherever they need to go. So again, it just kind of helps. So you're not checking, the headlights. Now go check the taillights. Now go check your horn. Maybe try to do it in order as the driver would walk around the truck. So that would help it. And then again, just anything else that you may be, setting up in here. If it has a drop down, chances are there's a dictionary for it that you can change and either add to it or update or change the wording on it. Another thing people like to change is, let's see if I can find it here. Employee statuses, I've seen people change the colors for their different statuses. There is... I guess I can't find it here. There's one for... It's for the drivers if they're doing your damage claims in the field. I'm probably missing it or scanning over it. There's one in here if the drivers are doing their damage claims in the field, you're able to change the different damages that they're able to choose from. It might be missing out of here because it's my test database. Sometimes stuff gets... Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Vehicle damage descriptions. This is the one I'm looking for. With these, if a driver is doing a damage claim in the field, they can mark, pick the damage point, and then they can say, what's wrong with it: dent, scratch, cracked, broken, missing, etc. If other customers come in here and add a couple other descriptions, just to be a little bit more specific, what's wrong with the vehicle. Again, it's more to cover yourself. If the customer tries to make a damage claim against you, the more detail, the more pictures your driver does in the field, the better it is for you to kind of fight some of that stuff. So this is another way just to add more to what we already have in the software. Right? But that's the dictionaries. But again, anything has a drop down, or anytime you want to add more to what we have in here, there should be an option for it in here. All right. DA for drivers. All right. So we have a bunch of different, each of these are division specific, but let's say for green light towing, allow drivers to take payments. Maybe I do or do not want my drivers to take payments on the driver app. Edit services. This basically means that the driver can add services onto the call. So let's go through these actually one by one. So if I have this turned on, the drivers could add services. They won't see pricing and they won't be able to change pricing. All right. So if I do add services in this one, in this case they'll be able to add services and they're going to be able to see prices. They won't be able to change it though because I don't have this selected. And then if I have this selected, they could add services, they can see prices, and then they can edit prices if they need to. So depending on certain divisions, if they need to do these features or these functions, we can turn on or off what we need or don't need. Right? Prompt driver for keys upon arrival to destination. Basically what this means, when the driver timestamps arrival to destination are basically dropped, it will automatically come up on their device and say, keys are being handed to whoever. They type the person's name in. That person's supposed to sign off with their finger or stylus on the driver's phone at that point. They have this option manually every single time if they want to. This would just prompt them for it every single time in the field. Right? And then this allowed drivers to create jobs. This is one of those things. It was intended to be added for a driver to do if you're doing private property impound. The driver basically they enter in the license plate and state. It gets the VIN number off of that and the car information. It reverse geocodes wherever they're at or whatever lot that they're managing, and it tries to match it up to one of your accounts that you have in here. And then if you have any default set up, it tries to automatically basically set the default prices, and all they really have to do is choose whichever impound lot they're taking it to. And then that call basically is created in your system, automatically assigned to that driver, and the driver is marked arrived immediately if you're using this. It's one of those things that it works for private property, or that's what it was intended for. We have other customers using it a little bit differently, but it is an option if you want your drivers to be able to create jobs from DA driver. And then you have two options here, driver edit history and driver view history. Edit history, so if we have any of the fields that the driver can edit or change, they have up to 3 days if they want to go back and change it if they need to. 365, this is a rolling 365. This is how far back they can go and see their history or how many old calls. So if you set it for, let's say, 14 days, they'd be able to see the last 14 days and again a rolling 14 days worth of calls on their phone. Usually once you get anywhere over 30 to 60 on this, the driver's scrolling too far back to see the calls anyways. Typically at that point it's easier to run a report for them. But depending on how many days, or maybe you don't want them to see calls past the single day, you can set it for as low as 1 if you want to. Right? These two options up here, enable QR scan and enable driver checklist. The QR scan, I go into reports and admin reports and service vehicle QR codes. right? If that's turned on, you could print these out or put these in your trucks, and the drivers can scan these, and this would automatically assign that driver to that truck. If the enable driver checklist is turned on when they scan this, it will also prompt them for that driver checklist of stuff that you want them to check over, their pre-trip inspection basically. But you have to have both of these turned on, and they have to scan into the truck for that feature to work. All right, so you can generate these, and this will tell you just on this report, if you use this specific paper, this Avery Labels 5263 paper, it's basically like an address label that you would stick on an envelope. It will print correctly on those different labels. Then you can peel them off and stick them in the truck. All right. They go for about $8 to $10 for a pack of 250 pages or sheets. So they're pretty cheap if you want to get them. Or I've seen people print those out, laminate them, things like that. So if you want to use that QR scan or the driver checklist, you'll have to print out those QR codes as well. Right? If you have multiple divisions, you can create settings for each of those divisions. All right? So that's the DA for driver. Security settings. All right, this is up in our users that we talked about before. We can have different security levels. Now, you may start moving some of this stuff around. Let's see here. Maybe somebody's marked as a dispatcher and a call taker, but they also need the ability to preview an invoice. Well, I can take that one item and drag it down to that level then. Or maybe my manager level, they need to do all of this stuff, but I don't need them to cancel a call. That's going to be on my dispatcher level. I can move it over here. So you can customize this or even create additional security levels depending on what people need to do in the software. We just need to make sure if you do that, you might need to modify your users. So your users, depending on who needs access, you might need to re-add their items here. All right. So if I added a new item, for example, I'll just add demo set. Let's just say I put nothing under it right now, but I save it. All right. Or let's let's do preview invoice. Let's just say under my demo I just had preview invoice. All my existing users, nobody has that. So that means now every single person in the software, nobody can preview invoices unless I came back to my users and turned it on for each and every single person. So if you're changing security levels, make sure after you're done, you do need to come back and possibly edit your users, especially if you've already been using the software. All right. So I'm going to move that back for right now, and I will clear that. All right, there we go. So those are security levels. All right, price list. This gets into your pricing or creating price lists. So we can see that we have a bunch of them in here. Let's just create one really quick by scratch. So we're going to call this demo price list. All right. So we can see there's nothing on here right now. All right. So we need to add our services one by one. So we can either pull from the list of services that were already established, or we can add a new one here. All right. And you can call it whatever you want. This adding a new one is the same as if we were in services and we clicked add. All right, so you can still do everything on the fly here as you're creating your price list. You don't have to create your services ahead of time and then make your price list. You can do it while you create your price list. All right. So let's just say we had a tow service and this was 150. All right. If I had a discount, I can add it now. If it's going to be a taxable service, I can mark it. And I can pick which tax applies to it. So maybe it's city tax, and I also charge state tax, for example. We can do that. Discountable. If you're adding a discount, this has to be selected. Discountable could be selected just because. It doesn't mean you are offering a discount 100% of the time. It just means if you want to, you can discount it. If it's not discountable, you can change the unit rate in Dispatch Anywhere at any time. It's just not tracked, though. So if you mark it as discountable and you discount it correctly in the software, you're able to run a report, let's say at the end of the month or end of the year, and see what the actual sale is with a discount and then what it could have been without a discount. So it's a way to just compare to make sure you're not discounting maybe too much, or just to see, okay, this account, we never really had set prices, but based off of what we're charging them versus what I charge everybody else, they're actually netting, a 50% discount on average over the course of the year. So it's just a way to keep track of it for your business. But it is recommended if it's something that can potentially be discounted, you mark it as such. If it will never be discounted, let's say like a motor club price list, for example, you would uncheck that. All right. We can have adjustments on here. So you have different time zone and payment adjustments, which we'll look at in a second. A time adjustment is going to be useful for maybe that price goes up or down depending on the time of the day. So we can mark it as such. And again, it's per service. Zone adjustments can be for, it's usually more of a zone to zone or like a location to location type of pricing. So let's say my flat rate is 100 and then I have a zone adjustment for, I don't know, Beacon. All right. On this zone adjustment, and we'll look at this again in a second, you may say, you know, if it went from Cleveland to Cleveland, there's no adjustment, it's our rate of 100. But if it went from, let's say, Cleveland to Columbus, which is about 200 miles away, my rate might automatically go up to 150 then at that point. All right, so it's a way for the system to automatically increase or decrease the price based on the location to location that you're going to in the system. And then you could do a payment adjustment, and this will increase or decrease the price based on how the customer is paying. So maybe you have a 5% cash discount if the customer pays, or you know, maybe I want to add a 3% credit card adjustment, something like that. We can do that with a payment adjustment. Right? If you add any sort of adjustment to it, you're going to get that little icon there when you're adding an adjustment. All right? And we'll also show you if it was taxable or discountable, etc. Right? And we keep going through. So let's say I want to add a mileage service on. Let's say it's $2.50 a mile after 5. All right. Well, if you see this calculator icon, you have to set this up also. So with mileage, I can either choose if this was a loaded, return or deadhead, or an in-route mileage calculation. So this is loaded. I can either round to a whole, half, or tenths of a mile. I could have an initial fee. That basically, this is a charge that would be billed before anything else is calculated. Normally, I don't see this too much on mileage. Sometimes on hourly rates. If you have like the first hour is X amount, you can put that here. If there was no free miles, I would just put, in this case, the 250 here, hit set, and I'd be done. If I have free miles, though, I'm going to put the 250, and maybe the first 5 are free. So now when I have this set up, it will say the first 5 miles at 0, or free. The remaining distance is 250 per mile. Right? And I can even increase this again and again. So maybe the first 5 miles are 0. The next 25 are $1.25. The next 25 after that are $2.25. Then anything beyond that would be $2.50 a mile. So if you have a step up with your mileage, you could do something like that. Normally you just see something like this where you have free miles in our build for it, but you can do that as well. And the same thing works for in-route or works for return miles. Right? The way that these are going to work on your call, it's either going to pull the address. In-route will pull your shop address to pickup. Loaded will pull your pickup to drop off, and then return is the trip back. So basically that's your drop off back to your shop location. So you can set up different mileage calculators if you need to. You could do, we'll pick a labor charge here. Let's see, hourly tow. All right. Say my hourly tow is $100 per hour. All right. So I set this up as a labor calculator that has an L. Set up our calculator. Now I can round to a whole, half, or tenths of an hour. Tenths of an hour are going to be every 6 minutes. So you can, depending on how you want to round it. This is where you get into potentially using your initial fee. Let's say for my account, I bill the first hour automatically. All right. So I can set this thing up where I say the first hour is billed at 0 because my first hour is going to be taken care of by my initial fee. And then every hour after that, I'm billing $100 per hour. All right. So you can get into some not difficult, but some extensive calculations depending on how you bill stuff in here by setting these calculators up correctly. I've seen before people charge, $250 and they're covered for the first 2 hours, and it's a minimum of 2 hours, and then everything after that is an X amount of hours, and maybe it's billed to the whole hour. So it just depends how you want to set this thing up, or what your criteria is, or contracts possibly that you have with different accounts. All right, but that's your labor calculation. And then your storage is set up the same thing. Let's say I charge $25 a day. Again, I have to set up my calculator. Anytime, again, you see a calculator, you're going to have to set it up. You may have an offset time. An offset time will push your clock out. So let's say I have a police contract. I can't bill for the first 12 hours. All right. So I bring that car in at 7 a.m. I have a 12-hour offset. my clock officially starts at 7 p.m. It waits the offset time, in this case 12 hours, and it starts the clock at that point. All right. You may have a grace period. Maybe I give my customers a 2-hour grace period to come pick this thing up. So I give them 120 minutes. All right. If, again, it comes in at 7 a.m., I wait until 9 a.m. The customer picks it up within that time, they're not charged, at least for storage. But if it's basically 2 hours and 1 minute, that clock reverts back and it starts again at 7 a.m. So offset time pushes the clock out, grace period waits X amount of minutes, and then it comes back to the first minute it got brought in. So depending on, again, contracts. Initial fees, again, you may charge for the first, 50 for the first day or something like that. And you have some different initial fees. Normally you don't. I don't see too many that have this, but down here you usually just set the unit price. So let's just say it's $25 a day. And I can either base it off a calendar or a 24-hour period. And again, it just kind of gives you an idea what these mean with these little question marks here. If I set this up the way it looks right now, $25 a day, as soon as it hits my impound lot, it's going to charge $25. Then every time after midnight, it's going to charge $25 again, and then every day after midnight. So this thing got brought in at 11:30 at night. It charges $25. Say that customer picks it up first thing in the morning at, say 7 a.m., their storage is going to be $50. So it just depends how you want to set this up, either calendar or 24-hour period, or again, how your contracts are set up with storage. All right. And again, I can add discounts, taxable, discountable, etc. to all of that. All right. So I would make my whole price list and go through the whole thing and then save it. All right. So I have all these different price lists. The second part of that, or the piece that people always forget, is they need to tell the account to use that price list. So if I had this Baltimore Convention Center, and this is supposed to use, I don't know, my dealership price list, I need to come onto this account and tell it to use that price list then. All right, so it uses that basically that pricing structure that I just created. And you can apply the same price list to multiple accounts. Usually it's recommended, if an account is pricing is very account specific, we recommend having that account has its own price list. If you have a pricing structure that applies to multiple accounts, you make one price list and then just make sure all those accounts use the right pricing structure. And then if you have to make any account overrides that you have to on individual accounts, if they're a little bit different. So if only one thing was different on here, yeah, technically I can make a whole brand new price list. But if it's just one thing or maybe a handful of things, I can just go on here and just make those small adjustments. That way I don't have to make a whole brand new price list. All right. So that's how the price list and the accounts go hand in hand. Commission lists. So we have a bunch of different ones. Depending on your commission structure, you can make different ones. When you add a new one or you start a new commission list, whatever services we had marked as commissionable and services automatically appear on this list. All right. But let's say for some reason on this list or this commission structure I'm creating for my drivers, this accident tow doesn't apply and this extra truck doesn't apply. I can still modify this thing or add, there we go, items to it if I need to. All right, so you have that option to kind of customize this further. But let's just say this is a demo commission and it's 30%. All right. So I can put my default rate up here and apply that down to all of them instead of clicking every single one and changing it. You may have something like this, but maybe for mileage, everything else is 30%, but for mileage, only pay 20% on those services. Well, you can do that here and adjust individual services, right? And with this, make sure, if we're putting on the percentage, if it's a percentage, et cetera, that we do have that. If I did something like, let's say just 20 right here, like that, it would actually pay $20 full on this service. All right? So just be careful about that. Once we have this saved, let's just do Matt's commission here. Once it's saved, you can assign your drivers from here too. So I can just go down the list and pick whichever drivers have that commission structure. All right? And we can see from here, Andy has the base rate plan, Anthony has a 50% plan, Bob Evans, that's funny. Bob Evans has the base rate plan, so on and so forth. So we have an idea of what they're using ahead of time, but if I need to change it, I can go ahead and switch it right here just by adding a checkbox. All right. And then we get into your adjustments down here. This is if we're making time adjustments or driver commission adjustments. Depending on the structure on this, sometimes usually we help you along with this stuff, but you can apply this to, is this an everyday thing, or maybe you have different structures for Monday through Friday. The main thing to remember here is that you're covering every single hour of the day. All right, so we want to start it at midnight. Actually, this is a bad example. Let's pretend this is 0. All right. I'm going to change this up just a little bit. All right, let's use this for example. All right, so this applies to every day. Actually, hold on. It would actually look more like this. All right, this would be set up correctly. So my Monday through Friday, if I start at midnight, so from midnight till 8 a.m., there's an adjustment of $25. This might be commission, for example. Maybe my drivers only get paid $25 commission after hours, but during the day, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., they don't get paid any commission. It's just, let's say, salary, for example. Then from 11 to 11:59, we go back to the 25%. So in that structure, Monday through Friday, I've covered every single hour and every single minute of every day, at least Monday through Friday. And then let's say on Saturday and Sunday, from midnight to 11:59, I pay them 50% if it's Saturday or Sunday. Now, when you set this up again, I'm covering every minute, because as soon as that minute flips over to midnight Monday morning, I'm back into this schedule. Same idea, Friday at 11:59, it hits midnight, boom, I'm back into the Saturday, Sunday schedule, and it just keeps rolling through. But you just want to make sure you cover every minute of the day. This is one of those things, if you need help with it, let us know. Some of these get kind of confusing sometimes, especially with commissions. So just let us know, we can always help you out. But the main thing to remember is if you cover every minute, you're fine. All right. Zone adjustments. Let's see if we can find these are test ones again. Let's see if we can find a good one. I guess we can do, here's a good one. All right. So we set up different zones, all right, the names of them anyways in the dictionary. All right, so that's step 1. And then on your call, I don't know if I have it turned on. Let me see though. Yeah, okay, here we go. These are your different zones you can choose from. So maybe my pickup is in the Northwest. My drop-off is in the Canton area, all right? This is where you select the zone, and it feeds in from what you have on your zone adjustments, assuming you're using this. The main thing with this is, so if it was beginning zone Aurora to Twinsburg, it would adjust or increase my rate $10. If it's going from Aurora to Streetsboro, $15, and so on and so forth, Barberton to Aurora, $20. The thing with this is you need to cover every single possible combination that you can have. So you may have, Aurora to Twinsburg for 10, but then you need to have the flip side of that, which would be Twinsburg back to Aurora, if that would ever happen, and it might be an additional $10 increase. So forwards or backwards, depending on where you're driving or possible routes that you're going to take for zones, you need to make sure you cover basically A to B and then B to A. All right, so just be careful about that. There's not a lot of situations that people use this, but it is an option built into the software if you're using that zone type of adjustment on your prices. Right. And then we have payment adjustments, and this will finish out our training today. Let's do credit card. All right, so our credit card adjustment is 5%. So this will increase our credit card transactions, assuming my pricing. So remember, these only work when you have it set up on your service. So you have to have some sort of adjustment. So if this whole account needed a pricing adjustment of, based on the time, we need to make sure that every single one of these has an adjustment. Same thing goes for payment adjustments. This account is supposed to have a credit adjustment on every single one of these. We need to make sure that we have a credit adjustment on every single one of these. All right. So with the adjustments, not only making them is important, you got to make sure that the accounts or the pricing structures that you're using are using the adjustments correctly. All right. That pretty much now sums up all the settings in the software. We'll be releasing a newer version of this with some performance enhancements in either this week or next week. So nothing too major that you have to worry about. It's more just it should speed things up for you. But I guess if there's any questions, we haven't had too many in this training today, but if anybody has any questions, go ahead and feel free to type them out in there in the chat box. And what I can do, let me bring it up here. I'll go ahead and put our support number in there. So that's our support number and our support email. Softco.com. Put that information in there. So if you do have any questions, if you want to give us a call or shoot us an email to our support team, we can definitely help you out. Let's see here. Actually, I can put my email address in there too. All right, put my email in the chat box there too. So if you do have any questions or you want to set up any additional training, let me know. We can also set that up. It doesn't seem like there's too many questions, but if you guys think of anything that's later on or after the fact, let us know. We can definitely help you out. Or if you want some additional training or just some one-on-one training on a certain topic in here, or just anything in general, whether it's accounting or whether it's dispatch, or you need some, maybe you got a new dispatcher, need help with training or whatever, let me know. Just either shoot me an email, give us a call. We can get you on the training schedule and we'll help you out. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this training today. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon here with us, kind of going over some of the new setting side of it. But again, thank you again. If questions come up, just give us a call. Thanks for your time. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.